MS-13 is something that you have heard probably a lot about from Donald Trump and from other Republicans. If you're not familiar with it, it is, and I'm going to butcher this, La Mara Salvatrucha? I got a nod, so maybe I did okay. Started in LA in the 1980s. Its members are primarily immigrants and descendants from El Salvador, although there's been crossing back and forth in that, which is to some extent exacerbated the problem. It has pockets around the country, including in New York and Washington, D.C. And it has potentially thousands of members. It's been talked about a lot. And let's say up front, MS-13 has committed a number of crimes up into and including murder, some of them brutal, even horrific murders. But do they merit the constant coverage by Donald Trump, where he cannot talk about immigration, legal or otherwise, without talking about MS-13? Well, perhaps not objectively, but it's certainly serving a purpose. In a recent poll, 85% of Trump voters said that MS-13 is a very serious or somewhat serious threat to the United States. 60% of his voters say it is a very serious threat. And perhaps the only reason they didn't use stronger language there is that very serious was the strongest option they were given. 60%, the majority of his voters think it's very serious. Now, among Hillary Clinton voters, 32% say it's either very serious or somewhat serious. The majority of his voters, I believe it was 53%, say that they are personally worried that MS-13 will target their families. Not just it's a problem, you can say that. I think it's legitimate to say that if violence is happening anywhere, if there's any sort of organized violent gang of whatever nature, whether it's white right-wingers or MS-13, it's a problem. But the idea that half of his voters think that their family is at risk of MS-13 violence is insanity. Typically, MS-13, the crimes they commit, they're not going to Ohio and picking a random family. They're largely targeting other immigrants. That's part of what makes it such a horrible problem. That part always left out of Donald Trump's denunciations of MS-13 for some reason, when he's calling them an infestation, animals, thugs, saying that ICE has had to liberate towns from the grasp of MS-13. Something that there is absolutely no truth to whatsoever. He is lying on a weekly basis to the American people about MS-13. And you might wonder why. This is why. So that 60% of his voters think that it's a huge problem. Perhaps a huge problem that they will go to the polls to vote for Republicans to defend them against. And they can't help but succeed, these Republicans, since it's not an actual very serious threat to Americans across the country. By the way, to put it in perspective, in May of 2017, HuffPost YouGov did a poll. 37% of Americans were at least somewhat worried that they or a family member would fall victim to gun violence. So it is about twice as likely that Republicans think MS-13 will attack them than that gun violence generally is a problem. What a wild, insane country we live in.